Hello and welcome to Reiki Women Podcasts. It's Bronwen Logan here, and I am with the beautiful Carrie Varela. Hi, Carrie. And the gorgeous Michaela Daystar. Lucky me, right? Now, today we're going to talk about something which one of our, now what did Sally call herself? Our number one fan, yes, number one fan sent in a question, and I've forgotten exactly what the question was. Sorry, Sally, but it had to do with vibrations. And so when we talk about vibrations, or if we talk about vibrations, does it relate to the system of Reiki? And I guess we were just chatting before about what this might encompass. And for me, I'm thinking that it means sort of like, does someone move to a higher vibration level or something along that line if they're practicing the system of Reiki? Does it support that? And what might that mean if it does? I don't know. What do you guys think? Carrie, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation, and it's really heartening to know we have a top fan. Thanks, Sally, for the question. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways we could take that question. I don't know exactly if the topic of vibration was really something that Yusui ever spoke to. So certainly, there's like that traditional form of Reiki that might not have a whole lot of input into this topic. And of course, you've seen how Reiki has evolved to be what it is today. And so there might be some topics or some spaces within Reiki where vibration is talked about extensively in relationship to Reiki. These kinds of conversations of like Reiki and astral traveling and like going to the seventh dimension using energy work. And I don't know exactly what that means.
Okay.
Except that I think when we do practices like Reiki, and I could even speak a little bit on the topic from a yogic perspective, but when we do these practices, it peels back layers of who we are, things that aren't us, things that are maybe like in yoga they talk about the koshas, which are like we peel back the layer of our physical body, we peel back layers of our mind, we peel back layers of our emotion, of our breath. And what gets unveiled underneath that is our true self, our radiant self. And surrounding the true self in this worldview is this Anandamaya kosha. It's called the Anandamaya kosha, which means this bliss body. And that bliss surrounds our true self. So when I think of high vibration, I think of blissfulness and blissfulness of like a joy, a happiness that we don't really tether to any person, place, or thing. It's just this radiant joy that shines through us. And so I definitely think that Reiki can help us access that inner self, that inner light, that inner joy. Um, and there's this also a kind of a delusional sense in the conversation around vibration, because I hear in yoga or in Reiki spaces a lot about like, well, my vibe is so high, like I don't need to get COVID vaccines, and I don't get sick anymore, and I'm immune basically from everything, negativity, negative energy. I'm vibrating on this totally different plane, and it also begs the question, I think, of like mind over matter. And our minds are so powerful. So if we can enter these these spaces where we do feel like a sense of distance, a dissonance from our negativity of other people's emotions or problems, and that could be it. But I think that is a little problematic to separate ourselves fully from like, our physical body, of like pandemics, of things that could happen to our body that has really nothing to do with our energetic system. And I know some people in the world of Reiki, like they might harbor the sense of guilt or shame around getting sick or having an illness or a disease that somehow they caused it with negative thoughts, with lack of knowledge about their body. I don't know that. So I think we also have to loosen that up and not shame ourselves for, natural disease processes that are happening that bring us. And Ron, when I was reading your book, The Japanese Art of Reiki recently, and you talked a lot about how, the practice of Reiki is ultimately about making ourselves more human.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so to me, when we're talking about vibration, whether or not we can have a high vibe, low vibe, I use all of those kinds of terminology sometimes when I speak about Reiki, because I think it's kind of fun. But it is healthy to explore what we mean by that.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate that perspective of exploring what we mean by a particular thing. And for me, what that often means is grounding it as much as I can in both my direct experience and in what's observable in the world. And so there's a lot that I don't have any direct experience with or direct observation with inside of the kinds of conversations that you're describing, Carrie, that I see happening inside of Reiki spaces. And I often just kind of consider those conversations not for me. But what I can observe very clearly, and that we can observe through, scientific means now, but, what could be observed in the past is that vibration is a physical phenomenon, right? I can feel the vibration of my voice right now as I'm speaking. My body, if I, put my hands here on my chest as I'm speaking, I can feel it in my fingers. I can feel the subtle vibration of my heartbeat when I pay attention. If I was to hold a frame drum over your body right now, I have several upstairs, and beat that drum, you would feel, even if it's not touching you, the vibration of that sound, working with your body. And we can feel the ways in which physical vibration from our own voice, from, sound that's outside of ourselves, from, even the sensation of wind or movement of other types moving across our body or within our body, has, can cause very powerful or subtle supportive feelings, right? There's a way in which we can feel lighter, we can feel more energized, we can feel, things shifting inside of ourselves because of that physical vibration. And we can see that out in the world. The trees are all off the leaves are all off of the trees right now. And, all fall and early winter, I watched the wind move through them and shake those leaves free and kind of reveal the bare structure of the tree, kind of clear away, the year's effort, the leaves that were no longer contributing, or that was their time to pass along, shedding that off through the vibration of the wind. And so these are the things that I can observe in the world, and I can observe the way that they impact me when I'm in my Reiki practice. And I can make both physiological and metaphoric connections between what I'm observing in the world and what I'm feeling inside my practice. And so that description, I loved the way you described that, Carrie, of the shedding away the layers and getting back to that blissful, radiant true self, which is so similar to how we talk about the true self inside of Reiki from the perspective of its origins, and a similar process of these simple practices serving to clear away, our fears, our angers, our attachments, our traumas, our beliefs, the things that have been projected on us from other people, our physical illnesses, all of these layers that are in the way of that blissful inner self. And that's the purpose of the system of Reiki. And when I think about, again, physiologically, in the world, how vibration is observable, how I've been able to observe it, if I'm holding that frame drum and I'm holding it against my body so that the skin of it is touching, a layer, right, of my body, or my jacket is draped over it somehow, and I beat it, the vibration is dampened. It cannot reverberate as far or even at all, because there's a heaviness, there's a layer that's in between the purity of that vibration and the void, the vastness, the emptiness around it. And so I can feel that inside of me, right? When I'm bogged down by anger or fear or sadness, when I'm bogged down by, illness or fatigue or, any of these things, it's like I'm dampened. My breath is dampened. My sensitivity to the world around me is dampened. The way in which I'm able to pay attention to what's happening around me is dampened. And so practicing, Reiki helps me to remove those layers that are dampening, the vibration of myself and my connection with the world. So those are the ways in which I very directly, very intimately relate to the concept of vibration as a physiological experience. And working with chanting, working with drumming, quite a lot in my practice, I've really come to rely on that form of vibration as part of, my own wellness practice and spiritual practice. The other pieces around, so when I think about what does it mean to be of higher vibration, for me, it's like there's been more layers of dampening removed, right? There's been more, jackets that were sitting on the drum have been taken off so that vibration can move. And that's all it means, right? It's not, I'm not a better person because I'm less dampened, or I'm not a worse person because I'm more dampened. I'm not, I don't know. I'm still just myself. It's just more of myself is revealed, and I have more access to myself, and other people around me have more access to myself. And so that's how I would relate to this question. As a starting point anyway.
Yeah, I can see that similarity between both what you both said there. It was interesting, wasn't it? It was just said slightly differently, but same actually. Yeah. Yeah, so well, I mean, I agree. And everything, we know that life is always shifting, moving. There is no stillness. There is no everything is movement, everything is change, and everything scientifically has neurons or whatever, I don't even know what you call all those things inside them, whether it be a human or a rock, right? So there is always movement and change, and I think we can see within the system of Reiki that we could start. I could explain it from one way, that I could see it as a very actually a very dualistic experience initially, if people are talking about vibrations. And I think, Carrie, you sort of touched on that. I know that when I first started, a lot of people would say to me, okay, so when I do Reiki 3, I'm going to be at a higher vibration level than if I'd done Reiki 1. Yeah. And I'd be like, that's not how I see it, because everybody who comes to a Reiki class, for example, is going to have their own individual self, whatever that is, their own individual vibration from their experiences in life. And so I'm not going to say that there aren't vibrations. I think we all vibrate. I think everything vibrates. Yeah. And but it's all totally unique to us. And I think you two explained sort of a bit of, where we're all at different phases and we all have different things going on. So we all come to a Reiki class like that. And a Reiki class is not a competitive arena, and so moving from Reiki 1 into Reiki 2 into Reiki 3 is an entirely 100% personal experience. And it depends upon what you take on and when and how. These things, it's not like we all read the same piece of paper and we all come out with the same knowledge. In reality, yeah, we are all totally unique with it, because it is an energetic practice. Yes, we can read a manual, we can understand that knowledge, but how do we actually embody that practice? Yeah. So it can be, if people think in those ways, it can be quite a judgmental thing and very dualistic. So, I'm at a higher vibration level than blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I could not possibly look at anything to do with the system of Reiki with those eyes, because it would be taking me out of the practice. Yeah. It would be not compassionate. It would be nothing. It would be not for today anything, right? So if we were to move from that into the idea of how then does it become a non-dual experience, vibration, and I think that it can be. If we use the word resonance, and resonance is actually about more than one being, it's about more than one being. Okay, so if I thought I was just thinking about the vibration thing, and I was thinking about how I always explain hands-on healing or the attunement process, Reiju, and I always explain it as about sharing. But actually, this discussion has been really helpful, because thinking about it, I thought, resonance. So when one vibration, if you like, comes into a space, and the other vibration comes into a space, and they share that space together, there is resonance, and they move towards each other, and there becomes not two vibrations, but one. And this might not be correct, but this is just how I'm imagining it at the moment. So, but I'm thinking that is a really beautiful way of actually explaining something like Reiju or hands-on healing, chanting, so many different aspects of what we're doing within the system of Reiki, about us being together in a world with other people and communicating energetically. So I think that you could probably put that into a scientific little, someone who is sciencey could actually say that might actually be quite true. And I see that, okay, so that's in the system of Reiki with people and the practices, but I see it in life. Everything resonates together. And I think one of you just mentioned that before, Michaela, maybe about nature. I was thinking of, like, you have a rock and it has its own resonance. And then you have the rain, which has its own resonance. And you have the rain hitting the rock. And over time, the two of them create something new. They resonate together to create a new thing, and that is perhaps a new shape in the rock or a pathway or whatever, right? And it might take a very, very long time, but it's still about the resonance together of these two almost like beings. Yeah. And which also brings us to this thing. It's almost like vibration could almost, if everything is moving, does everything then have some form of consciousness? Yeah. And that would be really beautiful if we could see things in that way. That, I think, would encourage us to be more compassionate to everything in life. If we could see our connection more clearly. And I think the subject of vibration possibly brings us to that.
Yeah, and it also, related to that, brings us to that place of self-responsibility, because if we recognize and can observe again in the world the ways in which we resonate with each other and entrain to each other, like it is measurable that when two people come into close contact, their heartbeats can entrain with each other.
Yeah.
And come into alignment. Now, if I am in a state of fear or panic and my heart is racing and I am in that agitated space, then that's what somebody else might entrain to. Or if they're in a very calm space, I might entrain to them, right? And that's that kind of creating something new. And so, there's this layer of personal responsibility when we think about what you just described, the ways in which we influence each other. And anytime we walk into a room, whether we know it or not, we're changing the vibration in that room. We're impacting that room in some way. And, the degree to which I can tend to my own container, and I can tend to my own state of clarity right? Keep as many of those layers back as possible, so that the influence that I have in a space is one that entrains people in the direction of wholeness, wellness, and stability, rather than in the direction of chaos or instability, the better. And that's, again, not about me being better than somebody else or stronger than somebody else, but me being responsible for our shared ecosystem and the ways in which I impact it, and the ways in which I am influenced by it, right? Because if I'm not well grounded and not, tending to my own container well, then I'm going to be more easily, drawn into another person's entrainment, versus finding that place of balance. And so that really came up strongly when I was listening to you, is that the beauty of acknowledging our interconnection, and the way in which that can invite us into deeper layers of self-responsibility.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, you could go really geeky and scientific with all of this stuff. And there is a lot of evidence pointing us in the direction of sound healing and sound vibrations as being really powerful to help restore our body's frequencies, restore health and well-being. So I know that there's a lot of information out there on that. But one of the things I feel like is interesting to share is there's a lot of research done by the Heart Math Institute.
Oh, yeah.
And they, put you with all of these wires, set up these meditators with all these wires, and they've been able to prove scientifically that the 20 minutes of meditation, what is happening physiologically in our body is that our body's rhythms start to move in more harmony with one another. And
Beautiful.
the heart is the greatest rhythm maker of our body. And it is a vibration, a resonance that's felt in every cell of our body, our heartbeat. But we have many different body rhythms. So there's our brain waves, there's movement through our cerebral spinal fluid, there's peristalsis in our intestines, there's tons of different vibrations happening in our body. And the practice of meditation, they've proven it brings it all into resonance with each other. And so when we're in a state of disharmony, that's when all of our body's rhythms are actually working against each other. And they've proven that anxiety, if you're experiencing anxiety, you're physiologically in this state where all of your body's rhythms are totally out of whack and canceling each other out. And so that just that simple process of coming back into harmony, I think, is really the practice of Reiki. We open ourselves up to a bigger field of energy. We help move energy out of our body. And in the process of that, we begin to expand how much we are, like you said, Michaela, taking responsibility for our presence, in the world. And they've proven, that when we're in a state of greater harmony, the torus field of our heart can expand out wider and wider. And, so all of us, so we're speaking to also, these things that are happening internally to us, but also our words, especially if we're teachers, we sit in front of a group of students, however we're teaching, our words carry a lot of weight. And I've experienced so many times where I've gone to a yoga class and maybe the yoga teacher was having kind of a crummy day, and they can either speak to that crumminess, that feeling of crumminess, and then actually everybody's like, like we all get this chance to sit with our crumminess and the not so high vibe things. And through the process of breathing and moving, we get to shift our energy, we get to shift how we feel about that. And so our role as teachers is quite profound in terms of the impact that we can have on others. So it is really important, like you said, Michaela, to have that sense of personal responsibility. Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, that terminology like holding the space actually relates to that, doesn't it? It's and to exactly what both of you were saying. So it's a self-responsibility of what I'm doing. And especially as a teacher, when we are holding the space, how do we hold that? So, what is going on within us? And it is an interesting thing to think about. Yeah.
It is so interesting. I was thinking too about when I taught yoga classes, and I'm kind of the leader in a space, or even teaching Reiki classes too, that we begin to resonate with each other, but it's not always like that. And sometimes at the beginning of a practice, I see people are just like ready for like plank poses and chaturangas and like ready to like really work out. And I'm like, hey, let's take 5 steps back and let's actually take 5 deep breaths before we go there, And so sometimes those frequencies aren't necessarily aligned. And even when I've held Reiki shares, things like that, it takes time for us to really all come together and then start to make that balanced drum circle, that magic together.
Michaela, you're muted, darling.
Sure, I am. There was something that you, Bronwen, had mentioned earlier that I wanted to just circle back to a little bit when you were talking about, does moving through the levels from Reiki 1 through 3 raise your vibration? And, really just brought out for me this kind of point of reminder that comes up so often in conversation, which is that attunement doesn't give us mastery in this system. Practice does. And so, there's a thread of a belief system inside of certain Reiki communities that truly attunement is the mechanism for bringing Reiki into our life, for doing all of this clearing that we're describing, for raising our vibration, if that's the language that one's using. And that attunement alone does that for us. And that's quite inaccurate to how the system was originally understood and conceived in its original context. That attunement has, or Reiju has, this other function inside the system, but what really moves us along in let's just use the terminology of this episode, raising our vibration, is practice. Right. And so under that definition, somebody who's been attuned to Reiki 1 and who diligently practices with Joshin Kokyoho, with Tenahira, hands-on healing, working with the precepts, working with their breath, their body, their mind, to align all of those things together, move through their life as an embodiment of the precepts, and they're diligent in that, compared to somebody who's been attuned through level 3 but doesn't really practice much, right? I would say that the higher vibration person, or the person who has cleared away more of that dampening of their vibration, is that level 1 person who is in diligent, regular practice.
But once again, I mean, it's not really a comparative thing, I have to say. Yep. But it means for themselves that they have moved much further than someone who simply doesn't practice and has just received, a couple of attunements. And, the whole attunement thing, Reiju, of being with the teacher, I think is that resonance idea is really important and supportive. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you then. Did I interrupt you, Michaela?
No, it's fine. I think the idea that it's not right, holding the non-duality, that it's not a comparison, and it is another point of emphasis around personal responsibility. Because if I believe that having had that moment of attunement with my teacher is what's going to get me, where I want to be in my practice, but I don't actually practice beyond that day, then I'm not actually taking responsibility for my practice and for the impact I'm having in the world. And I'm missing out, right? I'm missing out on the benefits that this system promises me, even if I have had a really powerful experience of attunement that stays with me and that lasts, which is also certainly something people experience.
It's like, it still exists today, but I think it was really, when I first started, was much more prominent, that people would go, oh, that person's, have you met such and such? They're a Reiki master.
Yeah.
And it means nothing, it's just words.
Yeah.
So, which is exactly what you're saying. It's about practice, not anything else. So you might have been attuned, you might have had a couple of attunements, but that's it, right? So maybe, but maybe not, you don't know. And so I was actually going to unplug something that I'm going to be doing. We can each get a go each time, can we? Anyway, my turn. I'm just about to on this subject of Reiju, and what you were saying, Michaela, in Japan, that the the Usu Reiki Ryoho, that they or the Gakai, sorry, that the Gakai, the association in Japan, that they do attunements or reiju every time they come together. And that's the traditional idea, because it is this idea of moving into that space with, I don't even know if in the group they call them teachers, but like your elders. So the ones who have been practicing for a long time, and taking the ones who haven't practiced as long, and the coming into a space together and using Reiju for that. So Reiju means well, it's a practice called Goshimbo, which it means inner armor. And I think that also explains a little bit more about what we're saying. So this inner armor is like a resilience within us that we build. So a strength within us. And that maybe is that self-responsibility that you're talking about, so building that within us, our own inner strength. And that really is such a personal thing, once again, not something that can be related to anybody else, because we all are totally unique and have different life experiences. But my little plug was that I'm actually starting something, maybe this week or next week. It just depends on my technological abilities. I'm getting it all sorted. But on having a 15-minute Reiju each week online. So for that purpose, exactly. So to create a space where we can come into resonance with each other in a group. And I really, really appreciate that idea, love that we can come together with something that isn't always words. I love words, but sometimes just being in that energetic space together is definitely incredibly powerful. And it's another way of us connecting and communicating and being together and supporting each other. So
I love that. I look forward to joining.
yeah, should be fun.
I love that. I feel like, our presence and connection to each other, it's a resonance that sticks with us for a period of time. And so as listeners to the podcast, maybe there's something in these conversations that really sticks with you, and it becomes like a part of your field. In your mind, you're thinking about some of the topics we discussed. But I feel that way all the time, things that Bronwen said, Michaela said, that's just like little pieces of your wisdom that stick with me, and then of course, just other things that are happening in my life. And I don't think we all need to be Reiki masters to really be in control of or to have a resonant energy. I think of my kids, they're just so full of joy right now. They're so amazing. So they just shine their little light, and they don't need practices like Reiki to help illuminate that for themselves. But whatever it is, through the process of growing up, I think of a Reiki practitioner as just one who can move out of energies or emotions that are dragging them down. And I had a moon day yesterday. It was a Monday, but a moon day for me is like a day where I'm like, I hit Monday like a brick wall, and I'm like, I don't even have any creative energy inside me. I'm not sure what I need to be doing, what I need to be working on. And I knew from just, and having navigated these kinds of moon days many times as a solo entrepreneur for the last 15 years, that to me is a signal that I need my practice, and I need my practice every day. But yesterday, I really deeply needed my practice. And I found that after sitting with the precepts for 20 minutes and even a little bit longer, I needed a little bit more time, was that I realized, what's out of sync for me is that I'm not present. I got pulled away into some future event that I'm really excited about, and it just left me feeling like totally scattered. I realized through that process that I really needed to work through the frustration I've been feeling around a certain thing, a certain challenge in my life. And when I gave myself space to do that, I was able to shift my frequency, shift my energy. And it's something that maybe only I can really feel, because it's about me and how I was feeling in that day, but it helped me get into a creative space. And then I could actually do something that was beneficial for what I needed to get done this week, but also that lifted me up, something that I could actually take some time to enjoy. And so when we're talking about energy and frequency, I just think of whatever it is that your practice. Maybe it's not Reiki, maybe it's something else. I don't know how many non-Reiki practitioners listen to our podcast, but is that we've been given these tools to help us shift back into our original state of harmony, shift back into our pure heart and mind. And I don't think you need exactly Reiki to help you do that, but I think a lot of people live in actually states of disharmony, and the feelings that I was feeling of not feeling present, frustrated about something in my life, you could live a whole life, your whole life living in that feeling and those sensations, and rarely having those moments of clarity, of connection, of presence, of moving beyond those emotions that sit on the surface of our awareness into something deeper, into something more peaceful, more grounded, more aligned. So these all just speak to me about the benefits of the practice, and points us in the direction of what are those things that help us get into that, in that state of harmony, into that state of inner flow, where we can look at our problems, we can look at the low vibe stuff that's happening in our life, and yet give ourselves this time, these practices to help release that, help us shift, and even transmute that energy into something totally different.
Yeah, when you were talking about your kids before, and it just made me think as well, it is what you're saying, having an awareness of ourselves, and having tools. And yes, the system of Reiki gives us tools, and we can find tools in all sorts of places in our world. And if we think of resonance, and we think of how we are with one another, and or other things, finding resonance that is uplifting to you in your life, I think, is a really helpful thing, whether it be playing with your kids and just soaking up their joy, or being in nature and resonating with that. There's all different places we can find that. So I would suggest, for anyone who's having a moon day, as Carrie calls it, living in the shadow, and then there's tools out there to support you, and finding others who uplift you, or other things that uplift you is one of the things that I would recommend doing, and moving into that resonance, that vibe. So thank you, everyone, for your beautiful thoughts today. And thank you, Sally, for the question. And anyone else who's got a question, feel free to contact us. And you can do that through our Facebook or YouTube or whatever. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Thanks, friends.
Oh, and don't forget to like it and follow it and share it or whatever. Yeah, we appreciate it. Lots of love.
All things.
Bye.
Bye.